I'm at University of California, Berkeley, and I'm asking the question, why are men taught not to cry?
I think maybe because it demonstrates like a sort of weakness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And weakness is associated typically with femininity as opposed to masculinity. Masculinity, or not masculinity in a non-toxic sense, you know. But I think that masculinity, not only that men are taught not to cry, but they're not taught to feel emotions besides anger. Anger is the only emotion that's acceptable under the toxic masculine standards.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, of course crying is healthy, but men are taught, you know, not to do that. Again, not to show weakness.
Yeah.
In order to constantly be strong. But it eventually eats them away.
Yeah.
There's a way that it's important for men to be able to have each other's back. And if you stand in a circle of men with your backs to each other like this, you'll feel an energy that feels really supportive. That's a special kind of masculine energy about men sort of protecting each other's back, right? And I think that people have sometimes misunderstood that as that you have to be unemotional in order to do that. And that's actually not true. Men could hold each other's back and still be fully in their emotion. They could be in their tears or their joy or whatever's going on. I think it's just a misunderstanding. And it's been a sort of dilution of this kind of deeper principle of men having each other's back.
I mean, I guess they're expected to be like the protectors in society, and so they're expected to not show any kind of weakness, and crying would be a kind of weakness.
Yeah. I think it's just part of the history. Like in every culture, men are supposed to be the man of the family, you know, like it's part of the patriarch culture. And even today, like feminism or like or equality has been improved a lot, but like deep inside, like men are still expected to be tougher, to be stronger than women in some ways. Yeah.
People think defines masculinity as like has to be strength always, and that never allows space for men to like have emotions, and one of those like being the ability to cry.
I think it depends, especially like between cultures. Like I'm Dominican, and it's not something that's common in Dominican culture, at least. You don't see your father crying, and I think that just projects to the sons especially. And yeah, there's just they don't teach their kids to talk about their emotions, which is a huge problem, because when you can't recognize your own emotions, it just leads to a lot worse consequences in social relationships and work and all that.
I did a lot of crying when I was young, and I'm doing a lot of crying right now too. But I think men are. They're taught, you know, in this country, you know, men don't cry. Men are like John Wayne, you know. You ever see John Wayne cry? Never. See? Yeah. So you grow up like that, you can be just like John Wayne, except a lot scrawnier and, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never had any sons to teach. And I think it's just a bad tradition.
I think today the stigma around men crying it shows weakness, and this is not the case. Men should be allowed to cry. Men should be allowed to cry.
I like it. Thank you. مرسی. نه خیلی جواب خوبی داد. بچه ایرانی هستش؟
سلام. آرمانم. Nice to meet you guys.
ای ملانچی. دمش گرم. از من و سینا یه عکس باحال گرفت. قربونت. That's it, bro.
Yeah, dude. In society, like men are supposed to be strong because like traditionally we're supposed to be like the leader of the household. So I guess like crying is a form of weakness in a way, but I mean everyone cries. It's not like it's weird or anything.
Yeah. I think because they needed to be perceived as not the weak link, so they want to look powerful, and if you cry, it is stereotypical that's like, oh, you're weak. So
great answer. What about you?
What she said.
Yeah, she said. بچه ایرانی هم هستن. یه فارسی کم صحبت کنیم برای فالوور ایرانی. دستشو درد نکنه.
I think it's also a generational thing. I think it's probably more of a conversation allowing men to cry with younger, or like with the next generation, with newer parents, because it's more of an open dialogue about emotions. I don't know. I think it's like a traditional patriarchal like system of like no emotion, you know, like own the family, like take control, and I think it's like also perpetuating the stereotype that emotions are like, you know, exclusive to women. And
we were just talking about this to an extent. I think because of societal expectations and perspectives, I think it's like more rooted from like the much more traditional aspect of society that we were like that was been developed from like ages ago, and it's kind of just like instilled because we are kind of like drifting away from like the patriarchal society to more like a more inclusive, equitable society.
Do you want to give it a shot?
Maybe because just like how societies were formed, and men had to be like the breadwinners, and then like crying is seen as kind of like an emotion, and I mean, I guess it could also be seen as like not having control of your emotions, which like if you go back to like the 2016 election was like a huge thing, and that like, oh, like Hillary's a woman and she doesn't have control of her emotions. Anyway, it's like proven not to be true, obviously, but I think that's partially why.
You asking me that question?
Yeah.
Why are men taught
not to cry.
I have no idea.
Have you ever thought about it?
Have I ever thought about it? No, I don't know, maybe just like social pressures or something. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I was ever taught specifically that I can't cry, like from my family or anything like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I think that pressure comes maybe more from like television and commercials.
Mm-hmm.
In commercials, they're trying to like sell like this manly man, like a man's man.
Yeah.
And maybe like people will start to infer that like men can't cry from that or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm not really too sure.
Yeah.
But like I feel like I've cried plenty of times in my life, and I feel like if I needed to cry, I could. Like I don't feel personally like I can't cry.
Yeah.
Sociological conditioning to be masculine and to suppress emotions, which could be as far back as like just traditional gender roles of like being a hunter versus being a gatherer. But I also think like past 300-400 years of colonialism and capitalism has also contributed to this stereotypical idea of masculinity and what it should be, and media does that a lot of different forms of media, and they sell a lot of things with that.
There's one definition of masculinity, and a lot of that has to do with men showing no emotions or having everything like together, and crying is a sign of weakness. So
I think just to uphold like the ideas of like masculinity, like to be tough and stuff, and that tough is seen as like not crying. It's not right, but yeah.
Yeah, same thing, just like the stereotype that crying is like for girls and that men have to hold it in and stuff.
I think it definitely depends on the culture that you come from. For example, for me, I'm Mexican, so like kind of like the Mexican culture is machismo and that type of thing. So feeling like you have to be more masculine instead of feminine, and I feel like feminine traits are kind of like emotional, sensitivity, crying. So being the opposite of that is kind of like the expectations that are set up for men, that type of thing. So maybe just like growing up, that's just like what they were taught, and it's just passed on from generation to generation.
I guess because of the culture that we live in, that men has to be strong and everything, but I guess that's the way our parents taught us. But I think we have to grow and understand that men, it is allowed to cry.
Yeah, honestly, just like toxic masculinity things, you know what I mean? Like they're expected to be kind of like the pillar of the quote-unquote house back in the days. So I guess in that sense, if they show any like positive emotions or doubt, then I can instill fear and make them look weak among perhaps their competitors or I guess other family members.
Of toxic masculinity and like forcing to internalize emotions and feelings without having like structures like family structure systems to help them process what they're going through.
Good.
I think it's like a societal standard thing. It's definitely like how people are brought up, I guess. Like I guess men when they're young, guys when they're young, they're like given like the blue, girls are given like pink and stuff, just with like toys, clothes, like stuff like that. So I think it's definitely just ingrained in like society and just how it's like brought up, I guess. Like,
yeah, it's just like we're supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be able to deal with things on our own. Maybe it's like an independence type thing.
It's a tough one.
Honestly, I feel like a lot of it might just be from like never seeing our dads cry. Like it's just not something that we're, I guess, like, expected to do in society. I think that like people are trying to change things about how men display emotion right now in public, which is good. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Shout out to my bro from high school. Hell yeah, thank you so much, my man.
I think it's a social stigma, so I believe that it's just inherited into like past historical preferences, and it's just integrated into society, and it's really hard to break it.
They're taught not to cry because they're supposed to be tough and strong and be able to like persevere through obstacles.
I think crying is a bit of a like taste of weakness, and men always want to try to like seem strong, and so if you're crying you're showing weakness. But
Toxic masculinity. They're taught that they always have to be like the tough ones, either in a household, I don't know, and also like in movies, I think in media, like they always have to be the ones that are more strong.
I guess it's like for masculinity purposes, a lot of people or a lot of men feel like they need to have a cold front in order to seem more like strong or masculine. I feel like it's like kind of maintain that sort of like ego. I feel like it's a lot of pride involved.
I feel like because men are like taught to like as sons, they are like the base hold of like how the family will eventually have income in the future. And so if crying is seen as weak, so if they cry, they'll feel more obligated. They'll be perceived as more weak, and then that will cause them to not be like as sturdy as a income for the family kind of thing.
I guess that was just how we were taught by like our family members that were guys, at least for me. Yeah.
I think we get into different social roles, and that informs how we treat others and our expectations. So I think different prescriptive stereotypes is kind of what informs whether we think men should cry or not.
Long history of it, I guess tradition, right?
The question today is, why are men taught not to cry?
I think it's because in our world, like we've always been taught that it's not like manly, or it's not within their social constraints to cry or show emotion.
Great answer. Thank you. I appreciate it.